it seems to me like masculinity is like a really important thing to you. Like,
Yes.
I could see that being like something guy like you looks around and is like all these soy boys. I'm sure.
I love it. There's like there's all this new vocabulary, like where it's like almost like ebonics for this age.
Yeah, all the memes and stuff, the Chad memes and things like that.
Yeah, I think that it's funny that you call them soy boys. So these, gosh, ever since I was younger, it was just innate. It was before all this stuff that was going on social media and all this. I was in my 20s, and I would think to myself, "Oh my God, I'm about to get married." And I remember growing up seeing Homer Simpson on The Simpsons being a buffoon. I remember seeing Al Bundy being a buffoon.
Yeah.
Right? I remember seeing all these men being a buffoon, and then I remember. Oh, thank you. I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, why are husbands and fathers always portrayed as like morons?
You were thinking that back then?
Well, I was thinking that back then
subconsciously, or like actually? Like,
no, actually, like,
really?
Why is this? Especially since I was getting married young. I was getting married at 25, so I thought to myself, oh wow, like I don't want to be that guy, and I don't want to be treated like that guy. And I remember when I was getting married, I was 25. A lot of my friends were like, "Oh, like, say so long to having an opinion." Or right, like, or there goes George. Like now he's married. Now he's not gonna, be able to leave the house without asking permission. And I was so infuriated by hearing that because
I still hear that stuff.
Yeah, and I personally I didn't like it because I just told you I'm a libertarian. I like my freedom, and I can't imagine. I mean, I'm not gonna let the government or my wife tell me what to do, right? So,
this is the after hours. She's gone, dude. It's a different room.
So yeah, this is a whole different podcast now. So this is where I get to be as misogynistic as I want. No, so I didn't.
So George, no woman's gonna tell you what to do.
No, absolutely not. but it's not like that.
Yeah.
Meaning that I totally respect Susan and she totally respects me. It can go both ways.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was an attack on masculinity from when I was 25, and that's like ago.
I feel like that's the thing people are talking about now. Like you have all these guys popping up, right? The Jordan Petersons, the whoever's. Mm-hmm. That's all they're talking about.
It was like,
but back then there were no guys like that on YouTube or.
No, and it was a joke. It was kind of like in the 80s and 90s, it was a joke. All the sitcoms that the dad had to be this funny buffoon. Right. And then all of a sudden it went from a joke to being like, by the early 2000s, it was like it was ingrained in our heads.
Yeah.
So by the early 2000s, we're like, oh, well, that's just life, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. That's not going to be my life. Like, I don't want that to happen to me. And I came from a specific family where my dad was like a military dad.
Mm.
He went to the military for many years. And so he ran our house like the military.
That 70s show, that was
right. He was actually, that Red on that 70s show is a very close representation to my dad. Like the grumpy, like old general, like or old military man.
Yeah.
And what's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong, and whatever. And so he was very tough on us, and everybody in the house was afraid of my dad, including my mom. Like everybody was afraid of this man.
Yeah.
And so he was a loving dad. He was a good dad, but at the same time, he was that military dad. Like you can't mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were some things that I learned from him, and some things that I was not willing to learn. Meaning that there were things that I liked and things that I didn't like.
Yeah.
And I was smart enough to step back and say, okay, what are those good things and what are the bad things? Because there were some things that I said, okay, well, I'm not going to do those things. I'm going to try to be better. I'm going to try to improve. Meaning that my dad was a little bit too stern. My dad was a little bit too controlling. My dad was a little bit too. I was like, okay, like, I want a man to be a man, but I don't want a man to be an evil ruler, right? Like that's not good either. my dad's a great man, and I really respect him. But at that time, during that age, he was like that. Now he's like the sweet old man. He's changed. And
They all morph into that.
Right.
They all morph.
but at that time, he ruled our house with an iron fist.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like that. I didn't think that was good. I didn't think that was healthy. So there were things that I said, okay, well, I'm going to learn to be better than that. So there are extremes, and there's an extreme version of masculinity where it's toxic, right?
Yeah.
And I try to ride the line of being very loving and supportive and kind and whatever, but I have my boundaries that I don't allow anybody to step over, man or woman, right? Like there's just like this space that I have around me. And so somebody told me one time, it's like all men have like this island, right? And let's say you're with a girl, and let's say she disrespects you. Then you cut off a piece of your island and give it to her. And then she like puts you down, and then you cut off this piece of island and give it to her. Then she says you're not allowed to see your friends anymore. Then you cut off that piece of island. And then you're like keep chopping away at yourself till you're barely just standing on your little tiny piece of land.
Yeah.
And anytime you even like move or fidget, like, right, you've done something wrong. Right? Like, have you seen those guys where it's like no matter what they do, their girl's always upset with them, or she can always find blame. And it's because he's given away all his self-dignity to the point where he could just like sneeze and it could offend her, right? Like this is bad. Where
does that come from? Does that come from like a fear of confronting the woman and him leaving her? But I mean, I think that's underlying where it comes from. Like, because you can see a guy act differently in different kinds of relationships. Like I don't think that's that guy with any girl, right? I think it is that guy with any girl. You think that's so the guy who has no self-respect or self-dignity is probably going to be like that with anyone, right? Especially when he gets into a real relationship, and not like he dated her for 2-3 times. Like they didn't really get to know each other that well. So maybe he could have been something else for just 2 or 3 dates. But if he went into a deep relationship again, like let's say he was in a deep relationship and he was being controlled and manipulated, if he ever went into another deep relationship, he would get to that point. And so that comes from you said a couple of things where it's like they're afraid to be alone. Maybe they don't like confrontation. Maybe they're not eloquent and they can't express themselves. So they don't want to get into an argument because they don't know how to express themselves clearly. It could be from a place of like scared to lose the person, scared to be without them. Maybe feels like they can't find somebody like them. It's all a lot of insecurity / fear type emotions. And so but what you end up with is the guy's not happy because he's being controlled. Eventually the girl's not happy because most girls are attracted to guys they respect and that they admire, and you cannot respect and admire a man who's spineless. It's just maybe you initially did, but over years, I don't see many women say, oh, he is so hot. He has no personality. He has no spine. He's a pushover. He does everything I say when I say it. Like, you need somebody to give and take, right? Like, you don't want to 100% control either party. That's, again, you will get to the point where it's not attractive. So the guys who start off thinking like, oh, I'm going to do this to win her over, and I'm going to do this to make her happy, and by listening to every word she says that she'll want to be with me, it actually ends up having the opposite effect. Either in the short term or sometimes in the long term, where again, even if you stay married for long periods of time, but you can sense that the attraction's not there. Why? Because it takes some give and take. And sometimes that means a little bit of attention,
Yeah.
in order to feel like you're interested in that person. You're only interested in people who challenge you. You're not interested in people who have no personality, that they're like so vanilla that it's boring.
Yeah.
Right? So for either party.
So the extreme of this unmasculine guy, this guy who's like getting pushed over, is the guy who's like, you know, what's kind of, I feel like, getting popularized now, like the guys who are like, you know, tell a woman what to do, they love it. Tell, you know, you gotta tell a woman everything she should do. You know, you gotta lead, be a man, and if she's not down, get another girl. You know, it's like that extreme of like,
well, the pendulum swings, right?
Yeah, that's like the toxic masculine. I won't drop specific names, but we kind of all know who the big guys and like that are on your YouTube and TikToks and all that, like kind of popping up.
And you know that the funny thing is,
but I'm just curious, like, why do you think a lot of guys are attracted to these talking points? Because I think there's something there, because they don't get popular for no reason. They get popular because what they're saying is very attractive to guys. Guys love to hear it, you know?
Yeah. You know why? Because whether you agree with all of what they say or not, and a lot of things I don't agree with, right? But guys are attracted to courage. And it takes courage to go out and say those
So
things.
are women.
Yeah, and sometimes women are attracted to these, remember, you know, when they say
to courage.
a lot of girls are attracted to a-hole types.
Right.
Why? Because they're courageous enough to, you know,
say
whatever.
Yeah.
Not that that's good. I don't say, I'm not condoning these guys who are extreme.
Yeah.
Because everything in extreme doses is bad. But I do respect that, and if they mean it, not just they're on YouTube or on TikTok trying to get followers, but if they actually walk the walk and talk the talk, the reason why you might respect them is because in some capacity, all guys want respect. How you get it is a different story, but they all want it, right? Men universally want to feel respected. Women might universally want to feel loved, right? So when they see these guys, they admire them because they, again, it might be an illusion, just like how the Instagram model might not really look like a model when all the filters are off and there's no Photoshop and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Same thing goes with these guys. I don't know how their life really is. I don't know what the quality of their life really is, but I can see why it looks sexy to other guys. Is, wow, they must have a lot of respect. Wow, they must have a lot of women. Wow, they must have a lot of confidence to be able to say that. They're brave. They're this. They're that. And so they're sort of like living out this fantasy of being this strong, tough guy through them, because a lot of guys are not built for that. Not every man is built the same, but every man wants respect.
Yeah.
So you kind of idealize these guys because you fantasize like, yeah, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna get my way finally, or I'm gonna say what I want to say. And so whether that guy really has the life that he says that he has is a whole other issue.
Right.
But I can see why it looks sexy to a lot of men, because as a culture, as like, you know, if you take men 20 years old to 40 years old, most of them are sick of being walked on, sick of being talked down to, sick of like whatever. They're not like happy with status quo.
Yeah.
Maybe they themselves put themselves in that situation, right? Or maybe their upbringing put them in that situation. Or maybe just like we live in a culture right now where it's all about women's rights and women's empowerment and women's this and that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
But this is like the pushback, right? Like, so there was all this push towards feminism and the feminist movement. Now it took a long time, but guys are finally like, wait a second, I'm sick of this. And then you're getting these extreme guys who are, you know, like extreme feminists. Now they're extreme, you know, whatever it's called, toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
But it's funny how what used to be acceptable 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago would be considered like, I mean, there was no social media back then, but
if there was social media, they would be banned for whatever, because what used to be the norm is now something that's considered like a bannable offense, right? Like, so I don't like it when they say it in their extreme versions. Like, I've heard some of them like, oh, like you own your woman, or you or you, like you said, like, oh, I tell her where to go or where she can't go and what she can say and what she can't say. I've seen all this, I've heard all this. That's an extreme, and that's like clickbait. That's not real masculinity. That's just him saying something so outlandish so that you'll just be like, what? I can't believe he said that. And it's so, it's like why we watch, like, you know, when there's like a car accident and then all of a sudden it gets a million views, or some person was walking and they fell off a bridge or whatever, like, and it gets a million views. Just something so outlandish that people want to watch it. And with our short attention spans, people have to be more and more outlandish in order to get your attention. So meaning,
it's got to break through the noise somehow.
Yeah,
so
like there these big personalities right now that are getting a lot of views. Why are they getting a lot of views? Because it's just so outlandish that you're like, what? I can't believe he said that, and you're just hooked. Now you're just watching this person, right?
I also think there's like a kind of like a. You talked about fantasizing. There's like a little kind of like a mental masturbation I think guys are doing. I think this toxic masculinity stuff, whatever, I don't even like that phrase, but that whole category is also very similar to the self-help category that guys are super like obsessed with, like, you know, those billionaire quick 30-second videos. And why? It's because at the same time you can look at this guy and say, I want his life, I want everything he has, but you're never, but then you can blame society and blame women and blame everybody else for why you can never achieve what you can, you know, what you want to achieve. So it's like at the same time you get to fantasize, but you get to cope. So it's like it satisfies everything. Like,
I never heard that before. That's interesting.
Yeah, because you get to be like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I want that. I want to be like, boom, I'm the man. But also you get to say like, look at the society we live in, and like this isn't, you know, what if they, you know, feminism, yada yada. And so you get to like be sitting there in your inaction, being a soy boy, doing nothing, you know, never trying to develop as a man.
You know, but like I'll say you mentioned Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
I like him. He's like the more
I used to like him. I'm not really.
He's like anymore. He's starting to get a little bit. You know, he wants clickbait now.
He's too commercial for me now.
Yeah, but when he started off, it felt very organic. What he was trying to talk about. And if you see him when he was on college campuses, just teaching and stuff.
Right. I remember that stuff.
And so, I think he's interesting because he's approaching it from a like educated standpoint.
Right.
There's other guys who are approaching it from a like clickbait standpoint, right? Like I think the Andrew Tates of the world, if you've heard of him, he says things that are so outlandish, right? Sometimes there's little nuggets of truth, but there's lots of horseshit too that comes with him, right? Like, so it's interesting to watch. Sometimes he's charismatic, so sometimes you can sit and listen to him. But if you don't know what he's talking about, you don't know which part is the nugget of truth and which part is like if you're not in a relationship or haven't been in a deep relationship. Like when I listen to him, I'm like, oh, that's funny because I know that that's not true. But that's funny because he actually picked up on something interesting. So he's not all bad, but if you don't know, if you don't have a gauge or a barometer, you know, you don't have a compass, when you hear something like this guy, maybe you won't know which way is up, and you won't know which parts of his talk are just being facetious or just being funny or whatever, or which parts to actually apply. You just might think, oh, I'm going to apply them all.
Who are barometers even for guys now? Like, who are role models guys are supposed to even look up? Like, even athletes, like, you can't even look up to these guys. And you're like, who are we looking towards for masculinity now? Like, I feel like
it should be first and foremost your father.
yeah. Well, I think that's a major problem. That
I'm sad that anybody who didn't have a good, strong father or father figure, it doesn't have to be just a father.
Yeah.
If you don't have somebody like that in your life and you're a man who's 20 to 40, you better go out and find one.
Yeah.
Could be someone as old as your father would be. It could be somebody a little bit younger than that. So, for example, I'm in my early 40s. I'd say minimum, I'd want somebody to be like my age. But actually, ideally, I would want somebody in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even. Doesn't have to be my dad. Maybe my dad's not a good example, but go find yourself a good example. Find somebody who looks like they're doing things well, are wise, are discerning, are strong, but in a cool, calm, collected manner. So meaning that one of the things that I wanted to talk about was that I think, for example, when women look for men, when we mentioned earlier that sometimes they are attracted to the a-hole types.
Mm-hmm.
But why are they attracted to the a-hole types? I think it's them looking for strong men, but misinterpreting the signals. So meaning the signals that a guy who's like that, this a-hole type is like, they might say, "Oh wow, look, he says what he says what he wants to say.
Yeah.
He's tough. He's whatever. He's like he's willing to tell me how it is, not just pander to me, because most guys pander to me. He's like he's all these things. Whether he's strong or not is a whole different situation. He might just be an a-hole, and just and that doesn't have much more to him." I remember when I was younger, my dad used to tell me, he's like, "Oh, you should always be careful of the quiet ones," right? Like
referring to other men?
Referring to if a man is really dangerous in any capacity, he's not the person running his mouth. It's the quiet, like the strong, silent types. That they're actually doing something. A person who's yapping a lot and just talking a lot of smack, they might be up to nothing. They could just be moving their mouth a lot. And so that's the problem, is that when we're looking, if you're saying like, "Oh, who should we look up to?" and you're referring to like basketball and football stars, maybe you're referring to people on TikTok and on social media. Well, these are the wrong places to be looking, my friend, right? Because they could just be those guys that are good at yapping their mouth.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous when they're good at yapping their mouth and they're very charismatic and good with their words, like this guy Andrew Tate. I like him in some ways and I hate him in some ways, right? Like I said, because he sometimes says little nuggets of truth and sometimes says lots of like nonsense.
I imagine you like him more on the government type stuff that he talks about.
As
opposed to the relationship stuff.
The relationship stuff, I think it's more like based on if you're trying to, a woman and a man are trying to use each other. They're not trying to find the right one.
Right.
And so I'm not, I'm not for
it's
that.
Definitely not pro-marriage at all.
So I just I discredit most of what he says because I don't think that it would apply to people that I would care about. I wouldn't want to give this to like his advice to like my son and be like, "Here you go, son." Like, they're going to be messed up in the head by listening to him through dating advice. Because his most of his dating advice revolves around using and abusing women,
right?
Which I don't believe in. I believe our women are precious and we should treat our women with respect. And we should want respect. So, but when he talks about other things, I think it's very interesting. So when he talks about like that we're in the Matrix, I think that is so spot on. And what he means by that is that this movie, The Matrix, everybody was like living in the digital world, not knowing they were living in a digital world.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, their actual real body was asleep in a kind of like a cocoon chamber thing.
Yeah.
But their mind was like thinking that they were alive and living this whole life, but they were actually in a digital world. So How does that apply with us? We live in our digital world,
Yeah.
looking at our phones, not really paying attention anymore. Like we cannot wait to put this screen in our face. And I'm subject to that too. Like we have to be careful with this. So we then live inside our little digital world. We don't even care what's going on around us almost, because we just have to have this digital pacifier. So what he's saying is, oh, you live in this matrix, meaning that you live in this digital world and you only find happiness in your digital world, which is the scary part. So only when people give you thumbs up and likes, only when you get views, only when you and then
get validation.
You get validation in that way. For guys, it could be through video games, right? Like they feel like, oh yeah, I conquered this city, I leveled up to this Lamborghini, and I have this hot girlfriend in this video game. It's like, no, wake up. That's not your real life, son. Like, but a lot of guys, instead of them wanting to take all that conqueror spirit, like conquer the world, and I'm gonna go get a great job, and I'm gonna go work hard and do whatever, they put all that amazing effort, but they just put it into something like a video game, which video games aren't inherently bad, but when they're this addictive, they're bad. Like people just want to live inside them. The other thing is,
and do you think like part of the matrix is that it's constructed to be that way? And do you think so? Do you think society is being constructed this way kind of intentionally to make men like more feminine, basically? Like, look, instead of going out there and conquering the world and stuff, like watch your little Netflix, get on Instagram for an hour, go on TikTok, but you're actually not living a life. You're not doing anything, you're not building anything.
That's thinking that there's some mastermind out there. And I'm not opposed to thinking there could be some people masterminding everything. But I think in this case, it could be more like...
Well, it doesn't have to be I think about it a little more generally. Like there's good and evil. And would this support an evil agenda? Yes, because the less I think there's some, and this is kind of delicate here, but there's, if you're straying from the image of God and like how he created a man to be, and then that affects, like we said, one person, you don't just how you are doesn't just stop with you. It affects the people around you. So it affects the relationship now. It affects the dynamic of that relationship.
Yeah. So I don't know if society created it, social media and all this digital world, to pacify you and make you less of a man. But I think that is the byproduct of these things. And you know what? Sometimes things weren't created for a certain purpose, but can start being used for that purpose. So meaning probably when they created social media, they didn't know what it might do or what the effects it might have. But now they can still use those effects, even though it wasn't initially created for that.
Right.
It can morph into something. So I think just the byproduct of social media is a society that is pacified and doesn't have very high drive.
Yeah.
They're not as... You can't be as driven when you're spending 3 to 4 hours a day looking at your screen.
Have you heard of Andrew Huberman?
Mm-mm.
He's like a neuroscientist, big researcher, has a big podcast, and he talks about social media, viewing it every day, and how that once you have that dopamine all the time, it's it's really bad for you because it creates like OCD type symptoms. And basically the dopamine is you're not getting the hit, so you'll end up scrolling for like an hour. And then the algorithms are so smart that they'll just reward you randomly, unknowingly, after 15 minutes of scrolling, 10 minutes, you go, oh wow, that was cool, so it was worth it. So now you'll keep going. So I'm a huge proponent of, if you're going to unplug from this matrix, unplug from social media, unless you're actually doing something on there, have a business, you're posting stuff on there, because otherwise you're just on there like watching other people live their lives, like, and you're not even living your own.
Yeah.
Or get off for 5 days, check it out on like one day. But like, I really agree. I think like we're just on it too much, and the echo chamber, and it's just I'm not seeing like too many, like, what are the benefits of it? Like, I'm not seeing, is it making us more connected? I don't even think so.
No, but it's
So-
definitely if you're not enjoying your life
Yeah.
and you're on there, it could be a good way to dull your senses, right? So meaning that, let's say you're not enjoying your life isn't what you want it to be. You're not in the relationship you want to be. You
Yeah.
don't have the job that you want to have. You don't live where you want to live. Those are all things that can be solved. And for men, especially men, they have the ability to solve those issues through hard work and determination.
Action.
It might be very long road to get to those things, but we can get to them. So meaning, you can like, and these are some of the things that I like about what some of these guys say. You can go work out, get in shape. You can go to school, get educated. You can go work hard at a job and learn new skills. You can go apprentice under someone and learn from another master of some field, like, so you could be the new master of it. You could do so many things, like to improve yourself, to invest in yourself, right? And those investings will pay dividends. It might not happen overnight, and that's where I think people, there's this thing of like, they're used to instant gratification.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me it's going to take 10 years to become the man or the woman I want to be, especially for men. Like, become the man I want to be, I'm going to have to like work hard for 10 years at this company to get to this level. Or I'm going to have to go to the gym for years to get to this like level. Or I'm going to have to do, like, all these things take time. But if you do invest in those things, then wow, you will be the guy who has a lot of value, that he's smart, he's educated, he's got a good career, he's in shape, he's whatever. Then you will have the attention of the woman you want to have, the attention of the job that you wanted. Now you can afford the house that you want to live in. And like, all of a sudden the pieces will fall into place. But that takes a lot of delayed gratification. And social media is not exactly a place where you learn delayed gratification. It's a place where you learn what? Instant gratification.
Right.
So how do you teach people that delaying your gratification, and it's one of the biggest indicators of success, is people who are willing to delay gratification have a much higher success rate than those who need instant gratification.